Oh, oh, I missed her again. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and oh, that's right. He's not here today. This is but Kenny squared. Kenny squared is not here today. He's out there on a much needed and much deserved vacation. So I'm riding solo today. This is Kenny. This is the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. And I've got just three topics that I'm going to jump into today. And I won't be obviously as long because the two of us can banter back and forth a lot. But I want to start with where Kenny is at. So him and his family are on a trip to San Diego, the West Coast, West Side. And I'm sure he's having a great time with his family. And that got me to thinking today that since we had our last show, that there was huge news out of San Diego, and that was the 80-game suspension of Fernando Tatis Jr. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because he's getting crushed in a lot of circles. And I would say partially deservedly so for the steroid stuff. But I heard a lot of people also bring up that he was riding a motorcycle in the offseason. He broke his wrist. And so he hasn't played yet this year. And so he's been out all year, was just about ready to come back. The Padres put together this unbelievable package to land one of the best players in baseball, certainly one of the best younger stars in baseball, in Juan Soto. And now you're thinking, okay, the Padres are on their way to making this unbelievable now run. And there's some teams that are in their way. We'll get to those a little bit later on in the podcast. And so they land Juan Soto, and now you're thinking, man, Tatis is on his way back. You've got Soto. Machado's having an excellent, typical Manny Machado year. They also get Josh Hader, which I still don't understand that trade. We talked a little bit about that a few weeks back, but they get Josh Hader from the Brewers. So they shore up their bullpen a lot. And you're thinking now the Padres, man, they're on their way. Their starting pitching has been really good so far this year. But no, a day or so after the Soto trade, it's announced that Tatis is suspended now for 80 games for steroid use, for illegal substance or whatever they call it these days. I don't think they actually use the word steroids, but it really reminded me first with the motorcycle accident because I see a lot of people, really killing him about this. So let's take a step back. Tatis is one of the better young players in the game today. He's a five-tool player. I want to read his stats from last year in a second, but 2019 and 2020, he showed a lot of promise, came up, was doing well. 2021 was a year where he took off. He signs also a huge contract and making him one of the highest paid players in baseball. I think Francisco Lindor signed a contract where he wanted to be $1 more than him so he could be the highest paid shortstop. I'm not sure what that was all about. But Tatis lives up to the billing here. Some pedigree there. Fernando Tatis was his dad. Very good, very solid major league player. Became a little bit of a journeyman in maybe the second half of his career. If you remember, I believe I think he's the only player in history. He hit 2 grand slams in 1 inning. That's hard to do, man. I can't believe he did that. When he was with the Cardinals, he was really up and coming. He had some injuries. And then I remember his last year or so, it probably was a little bit longer than that. He was with the Mets, and he was this pinch hitter off the bench that was doing so well. So Tatis Jr., a lot of good pedigree there. Tatis, I think, had he not gotten injured, would have had a much better, longer career than he actually had. But here's Tatis Jr.'s stats from last year, just the major ones. He had 42 home runs last year, 97 RBIs. I think with 42 home runs, you should have more than 97 RBIs, but nonetheless, 97 is really good. He batted 282, which is a really good average as well. He stole 25 bases. He scored 99 runs. So kind of a Ricky Henderson-ish year there, just one under 100 runs scored. Henderson used to do that all the time. I think Henderson never hit anywhere near 42 home runs. So he's got a lot more power. He also had 31 doubles. So when you start to add the doubles, the runs scored, the stolen bases, he had 25 stolen bases last year, caught stealing 7 times. Tatis Jr., you're seeing why they paid him the money. He's also just one of these very enthusiastic kids that when you look at the future of baseball, he's one of the guys that you would look to and turn to. But he gets into an accident and it happens, and he's getting killed for that. But I think we've forgotten Jeff Kent years ago fell off of a motorcycle, broke his wrist. But I think one of the more famous offseason injuries was Aaron Boone, who's obviously now the manager of the Yankees, tore his Achilles when he was playing pickup basketball in the offseason. And it was because of that the Yankees went out and picked up one Alex Rodriguez because they needed a third baseman. They said, let's just go get the best third baseman in baseball at that time. And I'm sorry, Rodriguez at the time was a shortstop. They made him a third baseman. And so this happens. This happens. There's been stories of players getting injured. I'm sure there's probably clauses in contracts where you're not supposed to play pickup basketball, or you shouldn't be playing touch football, stuff like that in the off season. But life does happen, right? Players can't just sit in their house through the off season. So we get it. And I think that folks that have made a big deal out of his wrist injury, I just don't know. Maybe with this now it adds up. But folks were making a big deal out of that before. So now he gets ringworm. I got to be honest, man. I didn't know ringworm was still a thing. I didn't think that was still around. I can remember, man, you talk about classes shutting down. If one student had ringworm and you'd see the things in your head, and I'm not making fun of it by no stretch. I never got it, but man, oh man, I can remember that was a big deal because it was very contagious, right? But I hadn't heard about that in years. One of my daughters had that when she was very young, probably first, second grade. And I never remember hearing anything about that since. I guess it's still around. But he catches it and he uses a balm or cream clear up this infection. And that balm and cream, he then, has to take a random drug test, even though he's not playing. And it shows up that he took a banned substance. And so this reminds me a little bit of Gary Sheffield, who without the steroid stuff hanging over his head would have absolutely been in the Hall of Fame. But he says that all he took was a cream, a balm, and he got pretty strong, got pretty big. That was a pretty good cream. But I don't think there was anybody that didn't believe Sheffield, because at least he was kind of forthcoming with it. But nonetheless, he's not going to get in the Hall of Fame, where he certainly has Hall of Fame numbers. This certainly at this early stage now taints Fernando Tatis Jr.'s Hall of Fame status. And who knows, this would have been his fourth year. So very early in his career. But these Hall of Fame writers have some really long memories. And so Tatis right away put out a statement saying, he takes full responsibility. He didn't realize that was a banned substance. And I know, here's what we hear from a lot of sports writers and sports talk show hosts say, hey, you should know every single thing that you put in your body, right? If you're a professional athlete. And I guess on the surface, that's true. But I guess also if you've got this awful infection that you're just trying to get rid of, and you get, you figure, hey, I got a prescription for it, or even if it's something over the counter, you might just figure, hey, it's okay. But certainly it wasn't. So I think that every criticism that Tatis Jr. gets for that is justified. I think that the criticism that he gets for the broken wrist, not so much. I mean, it just happens. But I think a lot of people now are adding the two together and saying, not only is it a lost year this year, he's going to be out for some games next year. And if the Padres do make the postseason this year, he's not going to be able to play in the postseason. So it's a big loss. And I think for just a regular fan like me, who is anxious to see what kind of numbers this now big three in baseball, puts up, and how the Padres can dominate. We're going to have to wait for that, right? We're going to have to wait for that some 40 games into next year to see, probably a little less than that, but to see, all three of them healthy and on the field at the same time. This has definitely hurt the Padres. The Padres have been mediocre since the trade. They are in the sixth place for the wild card right now. I was looking this up. They're 66-54, which is not bad. They're 12 games over 500, but they've been just playing kind of 500 balls since they got Juan Soto. And they went on a tear at first when they got Josh Hader. He was having save after save. The Brewers were blowing save after save. It was really odd, but that's kind of leveled out now. And so but that sixth place in the wild card is probably not where you want to be. Certainly, you want to get in the postseason. You never know what can happen. But the way that postseason is set up now is that you've got now Dodgers, Mets, Cardinals would be your first three, uh, your first three in, and Dodgers, Mets would get a bye. And then you've got those four teams now fighting it out. And in the National League's case, it would be the Cardinals. They would get advantage because they'd win the division. Just talking about the standings right now. Then you've got the Braves who have a better record than the Cardinals, but they'd have to pass the Mets. We're going to talk about Mets Braves at the end of the show here. And then you've got the Phillies, and then you've got the Padres. So the Padres right now would play the Cardinals, but it would be a 3-game series, right? Best 2 out of 3, and all 3 games would be in St. Louis. And so there's no days off. I think you saw the playoff schedule came out this week, and no games off. So that's not an easy road to go into St. Louis and win 2 out of 3. Certainly in a regular season is doable. Postseason is a whole different ballgame. So I do think that the decision that Tatis Jr. made, and maybe it wasn't a conscious one, I'd like to take him at his word for that. But it certainly is hurting the Padres right now because they certainly could use his bat in that lineup. They could use his spark. They could use his speed. They could use his defense. It's also an excellent defensive shortstop. Definitely a 5-tool player. So Fernando Tatis Jr., again, as I sum up, I would give him a pass on the broken wrist, not so much on him taking this cream now that is certainly hurting his team this year, and it'll probably hurt his team next year. Now, we never know. Teams could get hot. Padres could get hot. Even if they stay in that 6th spot, they can get hot and, move up in the playoffs or get hot and find themselves in the World Series. We've seen it happen. A lot of uphill battle this year. The Dodgers are just unbelievable. I believe they're 81-35 today or something like that. Just an unbelievable record. I guess adding a guy like Freddie Freeman to an already great lineup, right? And Freddie Freeman's second in the league in batting. He's having just a spectacular year. And so the Mets also, I'll get to them in just a bit. And then the Braves those are 3 teams that it's going to be tough to get by. So we'll see what happens with the Padres. This was breaking news today. I want to shift gears and jump back into football. And Kenny and I, as you guys know, we've talked a lot about the Deshaun Watson case. We're pretty passionate about athletes, I think, upholding at least some sort of value system. And this case just on the surface seems so egregious that of what Watson did. It seemed like there was enablers there. It seemed like it was very, very much intentional on his part. And I'm going to say with all of that, I'm also a huge believer in second chances. So I think it's good that Watson is going to get a second chance. I think we all deserve that. We all fall short in God's eyes, but God always gives us a second chance, always gives us a third chance. He just never stops giving us chances. But I think in this realm, while we're giving, or the NFL, not we, is giving Deshaun Watson a second chance, we can't forget about the alleged victims in this, because probably some of them have moved on well with their lives. But I bet, and I don't know this, but I bet that some of them are really hurting by this. Some of them are really feeling a certain sort of way. They haven't been able to move on with their life. I don't know what that's like. And for some of those ladies that might be traumatized for what happened, I hope they get to a place where they're able to move forward. So the news today is Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension got up to 11 games. So he's going to be out 11 games. His first game back, ironically enough, is going to be against the Houston Texans, his old team. I mean, you can't make that up. That's just unbelievable. Week 13 is when he's going to be eligible to come back. And who knows if he'll start. Jacoby Brissett might do such a great job that he keeps the job through this year. They start fresh next year. But anyway, Watson will be back this year. He got fined $5 million, the original penalty. There was no monetary fine on that. The statements that have come out today, I would say, didn't surprise me. I think everyone was prepared that when Roger Goodell appealed this, that there would probably be more games tacked on. So it's almost double. And I want to take one quick step back. Kenny and I talked about this 2 weeks ago. If you've read Judge Sue Robinson's report, I thought she was dead on in giving him the 6 games that she gave him, based on what was in front of her and based on the NFL's guidelines within their code of conduct policy. Did I think he deserved more? Absolutely. But I didn't think that it was her place at that time to give more based on that report. Based on that report. But the big thing to me in that report was that his behavior was very intentional. She states that, and then obviously she got to look at a lot of witness statements and things like that. And there was something very intentional about what he did time after time after time. And so that's what really made this case so puzzling. It reminded me a little bit of the Michael Vick case a few years back. Well, it's not even a few years, it's several years ago now that this whole dogfighting thing, it went on for a long time. So it was, it wasn't like one and done and, oh man, this is the wrong thing. Let me move on. And listen, I think Michael Vick is also the poster child for how you turn it around. I think he's turned his life around very well. Doesn't excuse what he did, but I think he's moved past it. And I think he's tried his best to make amends and to do what he can do now to live a very productive life. Certainly post football, he got to play again as well. But I think, he's been a model for that. Again, there's people that still can't stand his name or the sight of him, and certainly won't forgive. And I can get that. I can't be like that as a man of God. I certainly can't. And it's not up to me to forgive Michael Vick anyway. It's not up to me to forgive Deshaun Watson. And so I'll get back to what I was saying. So with the 6 games, certainly it was low, but I felt like when I dug into the report that that was probably the right decision that she made. So now almost doubling this, making it 11 games is a little bit better. $5 million fine, a little bit better, and that money's all going to go towards some really, really good causes. I was reading that also today. But the statements that came out from the Browns owners, I thought was dead on, but you could tell it was certainly planned. I've seen something different in Deshaun Watson's eyes, and I know that when he finally did talk, it was a hometown reporter that he spoke to. It also seemed very canned. But Kenny and I, you've heard us speak about this, is there been something different, a different look on Deshaun Watson as he's been, fighting this and after this news came out. And I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. He just looked really, really different. There was something in his eyes. I don't want to use the word evil, right? That's not where I'm going. But there just seemed to be something where it was a combination of anger and sadness. It's hard for me to really put it into words what I felt I was seeing, and the difference is if you go back and watch Deshaun Watson speak back, 3 years ago when he's with the Texans, or even when he was at Clemson, it just seemed like a total different person. This interview that he had before this new suspension came down, he seemed like he was back to where he was before. So I think he's going to move on with his life. Hopefully, he makes amends as best as he can to the people that he allegedly damaged. And again, we're a society, we're a kingdom of second chances. So who am I to say that he shouldn't play in the NFL anymore? It's not up to me, and I'm not sure that I'd want to say that anyway. But I will say this: Cleveland Brown fans, you've got some soul searching to do, right? I'll say where I had a moment several years ago where when Latrell Sprewell, I hated what Latrell Sprewell did with Golden State and with PJ Carlissimo. Two sides of every story, right? But to me, it was no excuse for choking and beating up your coach who's like 20 years your senior. And who knows what had happened before. Sprewell apparently was at a breaking point and everything like that. Then, the story happens, and then a couple of months later, man, the Knicks are trying to get him, and they trade one of my favorite players of all time, John Starks, to get him. And I was at a point where, do I still root for the Knicks? Do I just root for the uniform and not the player? For me, it's hard to separate that. That's just me. Some people can. I am just rooting for the uniform. I don't like that guy, but I'm rooting for the uniform. That's hard for me to do. And I said, well, let me give Sprewell a chance and let's see how his behavior is here with the Knicks. For the most part, he was a model citizen. It was a given that he was a great player. He came and did some great things on the court. The Knicks went to the finals that first year that he was here. But I had to really do a little bit of soul searching to ask myself, am I going to continue to root for the Knicks as they have this guy now on their team? So Cleveland Brown fans, You might be in that same place right now. And I know there's been some Cleveland Brown fans that have just turned in their season tickets. Some have been outspoken. I know Kenny spoke a little bit about Jim Tomei's wife being very, very outspoken on it, and a lot of folks are not forgiving the Browns. But there's also a faction of folks that don't care. That just, hey, we just want to win. The Browns have never been to the Super Bowl. They've got a world of talent. You put a great quarterback on that team now. They probably can do some very special things. So there's a lot of fans that I think just don't care about it. But I also think there's a lot of fans that are in the middle that are where I was with Latrell Sprewell back in 1998, and that's, I'm going to give him a chance and let's see what happens. 98, 99 for me with Sprewell, and it turned out good. I wound up really, he turned out to be one of my favorite players. And again, towards the end, he had a few issues when he got into a contract dispute with Dolan and everything like that. You never saw it on the court. He played hard every single night. He spoke well to the media. He didn't get into any other issues off the court, back then. And I don't think after the Knicks traded him to Minnesota, um, he didn't get into any other issues then as well. So let's hope that that's what happened with Watson. Watson is younger than Sprewell was back then, but Sprewell was a model citizen for all the years later. Let's hope that Watson is as well, and he can follow maybe an example that Michael Vick set. And for the alleged victims, let's just pray for them. Let's just hope that they're able to heal, to get past what happened, and that they can go back to. I'm sure some of them love doing what they do as a masseur, and it's they may have found it hard to go back to work. Let's pray that they are able to head back to work for that. Okay, Benny Ayala. I'm going to shift gears now. Talk about the Mets for a few minutes here as we wrap up. Benny Ayala, Mike Jacobs, Mike Fitzgerald, Kaz Matsui. It's rare air. Those are four players for the Mets that hit a home run in their first at bat. And then it happened last night. And I have to tell you, man, I jumped out of my seat. I was like, I can't believe that. I just saw that happen. Brett Baty, who is, by all accounts, one of the top prospects in the minors, rather, one of the top prospects across all of the minors and now in the major leagues. And he certainly showed it last night. First at bat, first swing, second pitch, first swing. He hits a home run in a big series, right? In mid-August now, big series against the Braves. Comes up cool as a cucumber, and he joins Ayala, Mike Jacobs, Mike Fitzgerald, and Kaz Matsui as only the fifth Met to ever hit a home run in their first at bat. What a moment. What a moment. I thought that was great. And, real quick, I'm just looking at those four names. Probably Matsui had the best career out of them. Mike Fitzgerald was in the Gary Carter trade. He was doing well, but he went back to the Expos for Gary Carter, him, Hubie Brooks, and a few others. Mike Jacobs, man, I thought he was going to be a star because he was a really good fielder at first base as well. And he came out hitting home runs like crazy. I think he hit like 10 or 11 home runs his first month with the Mets. And then he just petered off, went to the Marlins, had some success, came back to the Mets, not so much, and just kind of died out. And Benny Ayala was really a journeyman, although I think he might have wound up on the 79 Oriole team as a substitute. I could be wrong on that, but I do know he played for the Orioles for a little while as well. So let's hope that Brett Baty his career is a little bit better than all those guys. Kaz Matsui was a huge disappointment here. The interesting thing with him is that he also led off. He's the only player ever in history who the first two pitches of the new season he hit home runs. New season for that team. So his first time bat as a Met, the first pitch that he saw, he hits a home run. The next season, he does the same thing. He leads off game one, new season, and he hits a home run on the first pitch. Amazing. But those were kind of the highlights that we remember of Kaz Matsui. Not too much else. Anyway, Mets Braves. This has been interesting to say the least. These games haven't been that great until last night. And the Braves just kind of spanked the Mets. Now, taking a step back, after the Mets a few weeks ago won 4 out of 5 and went up by 7.5 games on the Braves, they hadn't lost since then. They had won 8 in a row. Then they won a couple more against the Mets. And I was like, man, the Mets need to cool this team down and get a win here tonight. So they come out last night and they get 2 home runs. Starling Marte, Francisco Lindor kind of before you've sat down, settled into your seat to watch this, and they're up 2-0. Braves come close. The Mets will winning 6-1. The Braves make it 6-5. They get to Scherzer finally in the seventh inning, bottom of the seventh. Scherzer pitched great. He got into a good rhythm where I think he had 15 in a row that he had retired kind of in the middle of that game. Didn't start off all that great, but Scherzer is so tough, knows how to grind his way out of stuff. And the bullpen came through last night. And when Diaz pitching the eighth inning, and then Trevor May pitching the ninth. And so that was an important win for the Mets. I know there's still a lot of baseball left. I was telling Mike Clark, one of our guests here on this show, that there is a lot of baseball left and that the Braves can certainly catch the Mets. I hope they don't, obviously. But the Mets are showing their toughness here. They have Jacob deGrom going tonight, and he's just been spectacular. His first 3 starts back, it's almost like he never left. And so we'll see. This is a great race. They always say 1993 was the last great pennant race, and that was the Western Division with the Braves and the Giants. And I want to say the Braves won 106 games, the Giants won 105, and went down to the last season. And that was because you just had the 2 division winners. And so the Giants went home that year after winning, I think, 105 games. I could be off by a game or two on that, but September was just spectacular when those 2 teams just battled it out right to the last game of the season. And so even if the Mets and Braves battle it out, they have the last 3 games together. Tonight's their last game that they play until the last 3 games of the season. Even if it comes down to that, chances are one of them will get in, one of them won't. But you want to have good playoff position here. You want to be one of those 2 teams that avoids this wild card round, because even though you don't have the one wild card game, this wild card round is not easy to get through. And so I think that you'll see the Mets and Braves continue to play great baseball throughout the stretch. I think that the Dodgers will probably just want to get healthy and get their lineup and their pitching in order. I don't think they are worried about their division. I think they will get in as probably the top seed the way things are going right now. Real quick, a word on the Yankees. As big as I could say, on August 17th, yesterday, that was the biggest win that the Yankees had in August in a long time. They're reeling, man. They were really just reeling. And it looks like they're going to lose again, to the Rays, who's one of their rivals, last night. And again, I don't think the Yankees are in danger of losing that division because there's nobody in the East that's gotten blistering hot. I can't say the Jays are hot. I know the Jays are playing tonight. I can't say Tampa's been hot. The Red Sox have been a little bit hot, but the Red Sox have a big uphill climb. But here the Rays have them on the fence. Josh Donaldson, of all people, is having an okay year, but not one of their big heroes so far this year. And so, not mentioned, but a walk-off grand slam home run last night. They went 8-7 when they were down 7-4. That's amazing, and that's as big a win to kind of get the Yankees ship turned around here a little bit. I know that they made a few moves to try to do that, but they've been really, I mean, they were a juggernaut, early part of the year. Not even early part of the year, up until the All-Star break, and they've just been really since the All-Star break. But we'll see. Maybe that's the game that gets them turned around. Okay, I am going to wrap it up. I missed having my partner with me today, but he'll be back next week, and we'll be back to dig into some more stuff next week. We'll probably have our football preview next week. We'll make our football predictions, which mean nothing. Although I was right last year with the Rams, right? They got to the Super Bowl. So I predicted that also back in August. But for now, this has been Kenny. Without Kenny Square today, the K Square is here and listening somehow. My partner, son, I love you. And we will talk to you. We'll both be back and talk to you next week.